and Workforce Development at Passaic County Community College. Not to dwell on this point, but I think it really is very important for the trustees to know how much I appreciate the involvement of the presidents in the community college leadership program. It truly made it a very unique experience because the presidents weren't involved for a guest lecturer. They were involved in the program design and implementation, but they were actually there for 15 or 16 sessions. It was a labor of love. And the feedback that we received from the presidents was really, it's unparalleled, as Dr. Nespoli said. I think it truly is a very unique program. So I want to say on this 2 days before Thanksgiving, thank you very much to those presidents. And also to who's not here, Dr. Ender, Dr. Yanuzzi, and especially Dr. Donahue, who also served as my advisor on my dissertation, as well as Dr. Nespoli. They wouldn't let me go without my rigors. So there I am, and oh, wait a second, I'll go back. Okay. Yay, okay. The topic of my conversation was the community college student preparation for the math placement test. It also became affectionately known as lack of preparation for the math placement test. Where were we here? Well, the purpose of the study was to discover attitudes and beliefs regarding strategies to improve math placement scores, particularly for low socioeconomic students within an urban campus, and explore possible test preparation tactics that might be valuable to refresh skills or to minorly improve slight deficiencies. Okay, how did we get there? First of all, if we put this in historical context, as we know, we started open door admissions. We started as small institutions, but faculty members quickly found out that they were trying to teach mixed groups of students, and it was just impossible for them to teach and for the students to succeed. So starting about in the 80s, community colleges adopted mandatory placement testing, and along with that, the corollary of forced placement and remediation. Once in remediation, students moved along in lockstep. So that initial placement becomes critically important to how quickly a student moves through the process. We see this nationwide. 60% of recent high school graduates who enter community colleges take at least one remedial course. And at XYZ College, where I chose to study this, we were seeing 93% in one given year of students, and it didn't vary much from year to year, who placed into remedial math. So it's a significant issue that we're facing. Obviously, where you're placed, the place where you start may determine if you ever finish. Now, the research has shown us that approximately 30% nationwide of students referred to developmental math fail to enroll. Those are people who just simply walk away. They don't engage. Perhaps more startling, though, is that students who do enroll and finish one course don't continue. So the unintended consequences are that once in remediation, stop-outs are more likely to be students who passed. So our policies are encouraging students who fail, they're retained, and therefore it becomes a certain problem in and of itself. The path simply takes too long. Motivated students, those students who could succeed, choose other options. They may be choosing the for-profit schools or other options that would get them through more quickly. So within our methodology, and I'm going to concentrate on a couple of instruments in particular, really what I tried to do was be very inclusive. I wanted to hear the voices of many different individuals. It wasn't only we as the administrators and the faculty deciding what the answers were. I wanted to hear the voices of the students. I wanted to hear admissions. I wanted to hear people from outside of the college, high school guidance counselors, high school teachers, and certainly the two instruments with the students. Well, uniformly what we found were that students do walk into testing cold. They walk in without any preparation. Research has shown us again that the greatest impact is going to be on the profile of the types of students that we have in a community college. Those who are first generation minority and low income students. Students are also unaware of the high-stakes nature of the test. Generally, we try to reduce test anxiety, and by reducing test anxiety, we say, here, just go take the test. So they're unaware that the 15 minutes that they take in that placement test will determine the next 1, 2, 3, 4 years of their life, or maybe their entire future. Upon receiving test results, students are generally demoralized. And now you're told you're going to start in arithmetic. But assessment errors are serious in terms of time, money, morale, and ultimately student success. One of the instruments that I used was a questionnaire that was delivered to students that were currently enrolled in remedial courses. It went to all of the students' portals account. I was amazed at the response. 624 students responded to the survey. And over 400 included additional qualitative comments. So the students were very anxious to share their experiences. Picking out a few of the findings from that, we found that 60% had not taken any type of math class within the year before testing. Even for traditional students, those directly out of high school, there had been a 1 to 3 time gap from the time that they had taken algebra, because our district sequence is a good math student takes Algebra 1 freshman year, Algebra 2 sophomore year. So by the time they take the placement test, it's been a good 2.5 years, and they're tested on algebra. You need to remember your polynomials. Most students had not done computational math without a calculator in years. For the arithmetic section of the placement test, they don't use a calculator. They certainly never use their own calculator. There is a pop-up calculator for some algebraic questions. But these students are what I would call calculator dependent for the most part. They've used them for the HESPA, they've used them for the SATs, they've used their calculators all through high school, through junior high school, and even as early as 3rd and 4th grade. So there's somewhat of a if you're not prepared and haven't dusted off those facts, you may not remember how to use fractions. Students, now as far as looking at a strategy of how we might improve, students overwhelmingly believed that individual one-on-one instruction was the most valuable strategy that would help them use math. A teacher, a tutor, a math lab. They want to see a human being. Other things are secondary, but a teacher is number one. Now, when we look at this problem, the faculty in our interviews uniformly, and administrators uniformly pointed their finger at K through 12 and said it was the secondary education that had left them unprepared for the test. But there was some disconnects here. And my question became, if we are seeing on students' transcripts that 86% had taken Algebra 1 and 63 had taken Algebra 2, why are 78% placing into arithmetic? Okay. From the surveys, what we discovered was that 44% believed that their initial placement in remediation was either too easy or somewhat easy, rather than being neutral or rigorous or appropriately challenging, which would lead us to believe that that maybe some refreshment would be of value. So we designed the refresher course with the help of several focus groups and the students' input to come up with the fact that we needed a diagnostic component. A diagnostic component could zone in, did the student know 9 skills but miss 1, or did they not know 9? You know, we needed to know where we were. We designed the course 24 hours of face-to-face instruction to meet 2 hours a day, 2 times a week, for 6 weeks. This was on the recommendations of the students. They wanted time to do homework. They wanted time to reflect. They didn't just want a boot camp intensive. Supplemented it with online instruction. No problem about that. Kept tuition low, didn't limit the pilot test groups. We had 3 sections. Total of 32 students participated. The biggest correlation became for those students who had completed Algebra 2. So what we saw here on the initial placement, there were 32 students, 21 had taken Algebra 2. Of those initially taking the test, we had 18 placed into the lowest level of math, being arithmetic. After the refresher, we had 8 of those students placed into college-level math. We had a total of 12 placed into some form of algebra, and 1 placed into a higher level of arithmetic. What did this mean? Out of the 32 students who were in that pilot group, 28 students chose to retest. 4 felt it probably wasn't of value. In total, the students moved up 49 placement levels. It saved them a total of over $21,000 worth of tuition. It saved that financial aid for when they could be a student enrolled in college-level money, because there is not unlimited amount of financial aid. So, what were the recommendations? And you can read through these, that's why you have a handout. But I looked at it as improvements could fall into one of 4 categories. Improvements prior to testing. Let students know this is a high-stakes test. You need to come in prepared. Don't walk in after a day of work. Don't walk in from admissions or financial aid and think that you can just wing this. I would never send one of my children to a placement test without being prepared. We should make the same demand of the student. Use multiple measures of assessment. The test preparation course, again, a diagnostic tool is important. And trained faculty. Faculty who's trained in remedial practices is critically important. That faculty member needs to be a kind and gentle person. We did have people in the test who, took the first test and then they stapled a drop form to the student's test and gave it back to them. That's not going to help our success rates ultimately. Improvements to the testing experience. I would argue that we should at least align our policies with and work towards some mutually agreeable policies on that. And finally, again, to our okay, here, slip right here, back to there. Another linkage with the high schools and the K through 12 systems. Offer professional development opportunities to high school teachers. Let the high school teachers be aware of what we're going to demand of the students on the placement test, so that the high school teachers can assist us in preparing those students for the placement test. So I know that's a lot. I really like to talk about this, believe it or not. It has some legs. I've been invited to speak. I spoke recently at the National Council for Workforce Education, did receive an invitation for the Bellwether Award. It's taken so many different permutations and so many different places that we can go. Even though it's math, I find it very thrilling. So please reach out to me. My contact information is there. I also have a link to the study in case you're just so thrilled about this information you can't prevent yourself from going back to it. So thank you very much. I appreciate your time.